Hello, everybody. Welcome into Go With The Flow, here presented by RS Andrews, the Dog Nation video channels. Happy to be back doing this show once again after a little bit of a hiatus, which we always take during the month of December. But one more chance for us to pick games against the spread as we roll towards the most important weekend of the season with the college football playoff and all the excitement as it relates to that. We are certainly looking forward to doing that with you here today. In fact, if you've maybe forgotten how we play this game, we'll give you a little bit of an update about how it all goes in just a moment. You're going to get a chance to hear from the entire Dog Nation team. Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley. Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers will have a chance to weigh in. Of course, I'll make my picks, or at least I'll do the best that I can to make some picks. And at that point in time, when we make these picks against the spread for the big bowl games, including the college football playoff and including the Peach Bowl, involving Georgia and Ohio State, at that point in time, a consensus is formed. And at that moment, we'll ask Dari Payro if he wants to join that consensus, or as we say around here, if he wants to go with the flow. After all, Dari's company, RS Andrews, famous for making things flow around your house the way they're supposed to, like your air conditioning heating vents or your water heater, or at times like this when water pipes are breaking all over the place because of some really rough winter weather. They're there to stop the flow of all that, too, which is obviously a very important task there as well. So Dari's been busy, but he's kind enough to join us, talk some college football here today, and make some picks against the spread. Now, we've had bowl season ongoing for a while, and so we're going to, for the most part, focus on the games either taking place on Friday, the day this show airs live, or I should say the day the show airs, and then obviously heading towards the weekend with the college football playoff there as well. So that's how it all goes. That's kind of the way the format works. But I also want to kind of remind you about our season-long standings, which we've been keeping up with the entire time here there as well. In fact, our producer, Michael Carvel, updating those a moment ago. You do see Dari from RS Andrews on top of things, sitting at 34 and 27 on the year, followed by Connor and I both at 32 and 29. And then, of course, Mike Griffith at 30 and 31. Jeff Sintel at 29 and 32. So obviously anybody's ball game here as you roll towards the end of the season, and a lot of fun as we get ready to make these picks. And of course, we're happy to have all of you with us and happy to be starting with the game that matters to our audience, that being Georgia, Ohio State in the Peach Bowl. It is coming up on Saturday night, and it is as big as it gets. We've seen a consensus line throughout most of the month here at about Georgia at 6.5, but my bookie, the provider for our point spreads, now has Georgia -7. So that's the line we're going to be going for. Georgia -7 to kick things off against Ohio State on this edition of Go With The Flow, presented by RS Andrews. And Mike Griffith, I will begin with you on this particular topic here. How you feel about Georgia -7 against Ohio State in the game we'll all see downtown Atlanta on Saturday night?
Yeah, Brandon, you kind of go back and forth every day. You hear more from each team about how this game might play out. And the reality of it is you know, there's going to be an element of luck, right? There's going to be a way the ball bounces. You think about Chris Smith and his 96-yard field goal block return, a ball bouncing off a guy's helmet. Suddenly Georgia has all this momentum against LSU. Things have been bouncing right for the Dogs all year, though. And, you know, I think this team is as prepared as it can possibly be. I think Ohio State is a much bigger and better threat than maybe some realize. But, you know, I'm going to give Georgia the edge playing in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I do think it makes a difference. I do think they've got a vibe. I'm going to take the Dogs, and I'm going to give the 7 points.
So Mike Griffith on the side of the Georgia Bulldogs here. I should say Jeff Sintel. How about you? Georgia -7 against Ohio State.
Yeah, guys, I like, you know, this line has fluctuated a lot. I see some places already have it dipped to 6.5. I don't see the strength and confidence there. I just think Georgia, when it's got a lot of weight on the bar, when it really comes time to play, I think this team shines. See Oregon, see Florida, see Tennessee, see LSU. I like the Dogs to cover that 7-point spread handily. Lay the points, give me Georgia.
So a lot of love here for the Georgia Bulldogs as the favorite. Connor Riley, you want to join the fray on that?
I do. I think Georgia's going to win this game by double digits. I don't think Ohio State is going to be able to hang up front offensively. And I think that's going to make over the course of the game, this Georgia offense is going to continuously do what it's done all season. So I actually like Georgia by double digits in this game, even though BA is giving us a fishy line at 7 when most books now have it at 6.5. Give me Georgia plus or minus the 7.
Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers agree 91% here on the side of the Georgia Bulldogs here in this spot. The one thing that would give me pause, and Pat Forty from Sports Illustrated is the one that gave us this number. Ohio State's actually been a point spread favorite in 98 of its last 104 games. They don't find themselves in the underdog position very much. Obviously, you understand where this comes from in this particular case, though. They did not play well to close out the game against Michigan. Second year in a row, they've looked bad against the Wolverines. Conventional wisdom would tell you if you look bad against Michigan, you're going to look even worse against Georgia because Georgia is just simply a version of Michigan, probably on steroids. That said, the contrarian nature of me still feels like this is a lot of points. I'm going to go with Georgia here in the spot. The honest truth is I feel like it's probably going to be a push. I've got Georgia winning this game by a touchdown. The spread is a touchdown. But for the purpose of our game, I'm going to take the dogs minus the points because I don't see them losing the game. I don't feel great, to be honest with you, about them covering here in this spot, but we should also take comfort in knowing that we've seen, 10 instances in previous playoff games of national semifinals being decided by 20 or more points. So typically the favorite covers and covers easily. So maybe that's the kind of thing that you take a little bit of confidence in when it comes to Georgia. Either way, Georgia minus the 7 to play for me, and that's a unanimous clean sweep on the side of the dogs here in this spot. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take Georgia here?
Well, let's get a little celebratory, tasty beverage here to kick it off as Georgia's now in the playoffs, as well as I was able to dethrone Boston Connor of his championship from last year on the regular season wins. I'm concerned about this game just because you have about 80% of the public money being bet on Georgia. That's usually not a good sign. So I'm going to take Ohio State and the points in this game. I think it's going to be a very tight game. I think there's going to be a lot of sweat in this game. It's going to be a nervous game. I'm going to be at the game. I would love nothing for a Georgia blowout, but for some reason, I think it's going to be like a field goal type game. So give me Ohio State and the 7 points.
Dari brings up a good point as far as the public siding on Georgia here to a heavy degree, to the tune of about 80% on both ticket count and monetary handle at virtually every betting house that makes those numbers available. So Dari brings up a really good point on that. We're also off and running on this edition of Go with the Flow presented by R.S. Andrews. And I remind you here that just like Dari knows so much about point spreads and gambling and things like that, as I told you to kick off our show, also knowing a ton as well about the issues around your house: air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. R.S. Andrews got you covered on all of that. That means if your water heater goes out, you've had a lot of folks in your house the last few days, maybe putting a strain on that plumbing system. Well, guess what? If you need a water heater replaced, R.S. Andrews can do it for you in many cases the same day. So make sure you find them online at rsandrews.com for a lot more on that. And, of course, we're happy to have them presenting Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews all year long here on the Dog Nation video channel. So the other college football playoff game takes center stage for us now. It's Michigan against TCU. Another instance of about a touchdown point spread, this time in favor of the Big Ten champs in Arizona against a TCU Horned Frogs team that probably surprised some to run their regular season record 12-0, came up just short in the Big 12 title game against Kansas State, yet still enough to make the college football playoff, where they'll play as a 7.5-point underdog, but they've been exceeding expectations all year long. So with that in mind, it's Wolverines versus Horned Frogs. Mike Griff with the number here, 7.5 in favor of the Maize and Blue. Where do you want to go with the Fiesta Bowl?
Yeah, I got caught up in, all of, TCU's, close wins. And the reality is they're not as talented as Michigan. Michigan's a more powerful football team. Michigan's a much improved football team from when Georgia saw them a year ago. I think Michigan's going to win this game handily.
So Mike on the side of Michigan here in this spot. Jeff Sintel, how about you? Number is 7.5 for Michigan, TCU, and the other national semifinal game, this time in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, I guess we've got a zig and a zag here with Mike there. I really like this TCU football team. I think they play a brand of football that reminds me of SEC football, run game, physical defense. I wouldn't be surprised if TCU and the Horned Frogs actually sneak into the national championship game in this one. The line's 7.5. I'm going to gobble up those points, but I really think TCU wins outright, so give me TCU in this game.
So a fascinating split decision here to kick things off on the Fiesta Bowl. Connor, we go to you to break the tie here. Michigan, TCU with the number sitting at 7.5.
Yeah, I like TCU here. They've played a lot of close games here. That spread 7.5 encourages me to lean into this. I do think it's going to be a one-score game. I think Max Duggan and this TCU offense are going to be able to do enough to find success against this Michigan defense. And I think the fact that Mike Griffith, a noted Michigan State alum, is on Michigan. He's trying to put the stink on Michigan, trying to ruin their season there. So give me TCU here plus the 7.5.
Clever thinking by Connor Riley right there. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, they're quite split on this. 64% on the side of Michigan, but that's not a huge spread necessarily in this particular instance. However, I agree with a lot of what Mike said a little earlier. I do like Michigan here, mostly because of the fact that the history of the college football playoff semifinals has led you to believe that these games will be blowouts. Most of them have been. You've only got, 7 instances of an upset win at any point in time in playoff history. So the favorite has won far more often than not, and as we said a moment ago, far more often than not, they've also won comfortably and convincingly as well. To me, that puts the onus here, the burden of proof on the side of TCU. Prove to me why you can keep it close against a Michigan team that's been undefeated, playing obviously a week out of conference schedule, but obviously what they've done in conference certainly validates the Wolverines here, and frankly, I just don't see it when I look at TCU. Now, to be fair, I've been wrong on the Horned Frogs so much here this season, so maybe this is just one more time for me to be wrong about TCU, but understanding the burden of proof is in the underdog to prove why they'll be different than the preponderance of evidence we have dating back 2014. Just don't see it when I look at Texas Christian University. From that standpoint, I'm on the side of Michigan minus 7.5. Dari Pero, that also puts the flow here on the side of Michigan as well. Do you want to go with the flow and take Michigan?
I'm going to go with the flow. I love Michigan. Hammer it. Make it the biggest bet of the week for you. Michigan is going to throttle them. They're going to win this game by 20. Absolutely love Michigan.
So there you go. So Dari Pero kind of bringing up maybe a little indication of something you might hear from me before this show is done here today. We'll have some best bets that we kind of open up the board on a little bit, and maybe Dari kind of giving you a little bit of an idea of where we might be able to go with that. That said, we transition outside the college football playoff and take a look at one of the New Year's Six Bowls. It's the Orange Bowl to take place on Friday night. So as many of you will be watching this as you're also watching our show, but you see 2 teams in orange playing in the Orange Bowl as Tennessee tries to make the most of what's left of its season after the injury to Hendon Hooker not being a Heisman finalist, and also losing in embarrassing fashion to South Carolina, now in a bowl game against a recognizable name brand opponent, Clemson, who has made the switch to Cade Klubnik, quarterback, wins the ACC, and now finds themselves as a favorite against Tennessee in Miami. 5 points is the number for Clemson against Miami in the Orange Bowl. Mike Griffith, we come back to you for this battle between the Vols and the Tigers. What do you want to do with the 5 points?
Yeah, I was getting confused. I like Clemson to win and cover in Miami against Tennessee in the Orange Bowl, the opt-out bowl. It's got to be heartbreaking for Tennessee fans to, be celebrating a great season and a potential trip to the playoff, only to lose to South Carolina, see their quarterback, who probably should have been at the Heisman ceremony, get injured and thus snubbed, and then see their top 2 receivers opt out of the Orange Bowl, and then see their starting middle linebacker opt out of the Orange Bowl. And this is an important game because they recruit heavily against Clemson. Clemson, they rose when Tennessee fell, getting a lot of the players that Tennessee used to get. So tough luck for the Vols. I think Clemson's going to win this game. I think getting rid of DJU was their problem, and I expect the Tigers to roll and cover.
So, Jeff, Mike actually brings up a really good point that when you think about some of the best players in recent Clemson history, some of those guys have actually been from the state of Tennessee, such as T. Higgins. That's actually a pretty interesting angle to look at when it comes to this particular game. How about you when it comes to Clemson minus 5 against Tennessee here in the Orange Bowl? How do you want to go on this one?
Yeah, I think the action on this and the opt-out angle has me considering Clemson in this one. I think all along I kind of felt that Cade should have been the quarterback for Clemson. And I felt they should have rolled with him and taken some lumps. It's funny what Clemson does sometimes with 5-star, very talented, highly successful high school quarterbacks. They let them sit for a season. They let them marinate, a la Deshaun Watson. I don't know if Cade Klubnik will be that good at Clemson, but I think he'll be pretty good. Will Shipley, lots of other pieces there for Clemson. I like Clemson in this one, especially for the opt-outs, loss of the quarterback, loss of offensive identity. Lay the points and take Clemson in this one.
So some love on the favorite here right now. Connor, you want to join the fray on that?
I do. I think this Clemson team has had enough time to prepare for the uniqueness of this Tennessee offense. I'm not really sure how good Joe Milton is, especially when he's going to be under the lights once again, given what we've seen at Michigan and when he briefly started for Tennessee last year. And I think this Clemson team knows that, there have been a lot of questions about them since that loss to South Carolina. I think there's a chance to maybe reverse that narrative. And while some people are calling this the Orange Bowl or the Opt-Out Bowl, I consider this the South Carolina Loser Bowl, because if either of these teams had beaten South Carolina, there's a good chance they're in the college football playoff instead of playing in a meaningless bowl game down in Miami. So give me Clemson here. I think they're going to be a little bit more motivated to go out there and show that, despite what happened against South Carolina, we're still a program that is trending in the right direction.
Perhaps a little bit surprising, Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers on the side of the underdog here, 55% on the Vols plus the 5. I do like Clemson for a couple of reasons, though, and I'll take them minus the 5 points here. First of all, one of the things I love is the fact that if you want to go back over the course of the long haul, I always love teams in the preseason AP poll ranked ahead of the team they're playing in the bowl game. There's been a little bit of indicator there that sometimes recency bias has a tendency to cloud our mind. At the beginning of the season, most thought Clemson was better than Tennessee. We've seen a lot of football since then that might change our mind, yet through opt-outs and injuries, things like that. Obviously, Tennessee has kind of moved closer in the direction of Clemson, but history sort of suggests that the bowl games kind of revert back the other way. And so that's the reason I think to at least be interested in Clemson. And then beyond that, here's what we also know. Despite the fact they just lost to South Carolina in their in-state rivalry game, typically Clemson pretty motivated for the chance to go up against the SEC. It's one of those things that Dabo seems to have a little bit of a running counter on in terms of how he's done against SEC competition, just given the fact that Clemson there in the upstate of South Carolina is located so much right in the heart of SEC country. I don't know that I necessarily agree with my colleagues that the quarterback switch alone is enough to fix the Clemson offense. I think this is probably, just objectively speaking, the worst coaching staff that Dabo has had since he's been at Clemson. That's the kind of thing that might need to be addressed in the offseason. But are they good enough offensively to beat Tennessee, just given the fact this is a pretty depleted Tennessee roster here at the moment? And I'm not even quite so sure how much the Vols even want this game. Traveling down to Miami may all kind of feel like a mission accomplished banner. It kind of gets hung for the players who are there. They enjoy some fun in the sun, getting away from the East Tennessee winter here. All of that sort of adds up to Clemson minus the 5, and frankly, this is a pretty easy pick for me, as it sounds like it is for most of our panel here right now. Dari, how about you? You want to go with the flow and take Clemson here in this spot?
Oh, man, there's part of me that wants to take Tennessee to cover this game. I'm really intrigued that they find a way to cover. But I think they've just got too much talent sitting on the sideline. So I'm going to go with you guys. I'm going to go with the flow. I'm going to take Clemson to cover this game. Although for some reason I got something telling me Tennessee's going to make it more of a game than Clemson probably would like.
That's interesting. Dari and I sound like we're on different sides in this. I actually have something else for you on Clemson and Tennessee before we're done here today. But for now, there is business to be taken care of with the Sugar Bowl, where Alabama made some headlines in surprising fashion a few days ago because their star players, Bryce Young at quarterback, Will Anderson, the edge rusher, both announced plans to play in this game in New Orleans. Of course, on the Kansas State side of things, probably the biggest game we've seen from the Wildcats in terms of stage and prestige, almost going back maybe like the Michael Bishop era and going back to the time when Bill Snyder was the coach at Kansas State for the first go-around. Obviously, it's been a long time since they've been on a national stage of this magnitude, and yet they get there by virtue of beating TCU in the Big 12 title game. Obviously, a signature win for the Chris Kleiman era there in the Little Apple known as Manhattan, Kansas. And the prize for that victory, a 6.5-point underdog here against Alabama. Mike, we go to you for the Sugar Bowl. Bama against Kansas State. The number here is 6.5.
Yeah, Kansas State's a physical team. They pounded the same Missouri team that pounded Georgia for 3.5 quarters. And then they also lost to Tulane. So, what are you going to get with Kansas State? Obviously, they beat TCU that, some of the guys on here are in love with, to the point of picking them over Michigan as a touchdown underdog. Alabama's missing a lot of guys, but the most important guys are playing. I think the fact that Bryce Young and Will Anderson are playing says a lot. I expect Alabama to get some pride back and win this game. As much as I have a sneaking suspicion the Big 12 might be better than we think, Bryce Young's the best quarterback in the country, and I don't think Kansas State's seen anybody like him. So give me Alabama and give the points.
So Mike on the side of Bama minus the 6.5. Jeff, how about you?
Yeah, I think we've reached a point in this season where these teams are what they are. I think, Kansas State has had some high moments this year, but I guess I'll kind of my thoughts on here run kind of parallel to what Mike thinks. I think Bryce Young is going to be enough for Alabama to win this football game. I think Bryce Young has been masterful this year in covering up a lot of the holes, a lot of the weaknesses and the issues with this year's Crimson Tide. I think that the Tide will win this game. However, I think it's going to be closer. I think it's going to be pretty close, and I see Young with some late game magic to pull this one out. That's why I think Alabama will win, but I think Kansas State will cover that 6.5 point spread.
How about a pick from Jeff Sintel of Kansas State plus the 6.5? That's quite a moment here and go with the flow history. Jeff on the side of the dog here with Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. I like it. Connor, how about you? Split the difference here between Mike and Jeff.
Yeah, I like Alabama here. I know they haven't played great in the Sugar Bowl in the past, when they're obviously not in the college football playoff, lost to Oklahoma a few years ago, obviously to Utah back in 2008. I know that's ancient history at this point, but the fact that Alabama has 0 opt-outs, I think they know they can make a statement about this in this game. This is a very good Kansas State team. They do not have TJ Smith on their team. That would be the brother of Chris Smith, and so because of that, he's in the transfer portal. I think Alabama is going to have enough, as Jeff points out, with Bryce Young. I think he's going to play great throughout this game. It's going to be his last game. I think Will Anderson is going to have a big impact, and give me the SEC here to cover the 6.5 point spread and take Alabama.
71% of Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers also on the side of the Alabama Crimson Tide here in this spot. And there's a part of me that really wants to take Kansas State because I actually do think they have a little bit of a shot here. I think it's a well-coached team, and they've certainly played, well in big spots in the past, although they admittedly have not been in a spot quite this big. Connor mentioned some of the Sugar Bowl failures of Alabama in ancient times, and yet what you'll also be reminded of is in the 1 year prior to this, which Alabama did not make the college football playoff going back to 2019, they did win their Florida Bowl game that year against Michigan. So this is a team that's actually thrived in the one previous instance when they've been outside the college football playoffs. I'm going to take that to assume this kind of stuff sort of matters to Nick Saban for whatever reason as a way of building momentum for the upcoming year. Obviously, that would seem to be the indication of why Young and Anderson are both playing here. And there's a part of me that still doesn't quite want to say that's going to be enough to make this easy against Kansas State. But honestly, the evidence would suggest that it's probably going to be. So I'll take Alabama minus 6.5. I wish I could make a stronger case for Kansas State. I'm tempted to want to. I just don't see it being there. So give me Alabama minus the 6.5. The flow decidedly with the Crimson Tide here. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take Alabama?
Yeah, definitely going to roll with them here in this bowl game. All the issues they've had throughout the years, I think Saban wants to try to build that momentum to go into next year. So I expect them to play a really good game and cover that number.
So that leaves us with the Rose Bowl, the final game we'll be looking at the official board picks for here today. And it's a Utah team, fresh off winning the Pac-12, getting its second win against USC, against a Penn State team that took care of business against everybody this season except the two teams that mattered the most, Michigan and Ohio State. So by virtue of that, they find themselves as a 2.5-point underdog in Pasadena to the Utah Utes. So, Mike, we head out west with you in Pasadena, Rose Bowl with Utah and Penn State. Where do you want to go with this?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Penn State. I'm not going to get too caught up in Utah. Let's remember they lost to Florida. You can't play too many transitive properties. That was a long time ago, but I think Penn State's a decent football team, and I think the Pac-12 was a little bit more watered down than maybe we thought at the end of the year. Maybe I started drinking the Oregon Kool-Aid for a little while, but outside of Michael Penix and Caleb Williams, I wasn't incredibly impressed. So give me Penn State.
So, Mike, on the side of Penn State here. Jeff, how about for you? 2.5 is the number.
Yeah, interesting little matchup here. Unbeknownst to most, these are two of the top 25 scoring defenses in the country. I think Penn State gives up 18. I think Utah gives up 20. I like the culture all around Utah. I think they've played in some big-time atmospheres. I think they've dealt with some offenses. I think I like Utah on this one. I think they will. I think the spread is Penn State's getting about 2.5 here. I like Utah in this football game. Like them to win it outright. Not scared of that number. Give me the Utes, man.
Split decision once again. Connor, how about for you?
I like Penn State here. I think they know they have a chance to really use this game as a launching point into next year. I think next year's Penn State team is going to be a good bit more talented. And so with some of the young players that they have in this game, I know they have a chance to make a statement. It's a really good Utah team. I hate picking against them, but Penn State is an underdog here with being the more talented team. I know that doesn't always translate to success against Utah, but give me Penn State here plus the 2.5.
As close a voting margin as we'll see from Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, 51% on the side of Penn State here in this spot against Utah. I'm going to go Penn State here as well. I don't have a huge evidence case for this other than the fact that I've actually thought Penn State was pretty good all year long. I really stood on the table for them on this show near the beginning of the year against Michigan. Looked like a fool after that. But honestly, other than the elite teams on their schedule, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State's really handled business against virtually everybody other than that. I believe that'll be enough to get them to the pay window here in this spot against Utah. And I'll also say this. I think this is a good football game. I think that, I think Utah actually is pretty good despite having lost to Florida. And I think Penn State's pretty good despite the fact they have two pretty ugly losses to the two big teams they've played. This, to me, feels like a pretty fun game between Utah and Penn State. So I'll endorse the game while also taking Penn State. Dari, the flow also on the side of the Nittany Lions. You want to go with the flow with Penn State?
Yeah, I'm taking Penn State here. I was actually really shocked and thrown for a loop when Connor didn't take the Utes, but I like Penn State here, man. I think they're gonna easily cover this number with a win and by at least 7 points.
So there you go. So those are the official picks that we've been making all year long. But as for those of you who've been watching us all year know, to conclude our show, we kind of expand the board and we give you a chance to make anything you want to pick. Now on Dog Nation Daily, we've been making bowl picks throughout here over the course of the last month. So this focus will be on just games slated to take place between now and the time that bowl season comes to an end. And so we'll turn our attention back to Mike Griffith on all of that. Mike, you see anything else on the board that we didn't pick that you'd like to pick right now?
You're muted, Mike.
I was saying I think there's been so many good bowl matchups this season, and even though I think there's been some opt-outs that have maybe affected some of the outcome of these games, I still think we've had a lot of fun watching some of these bowl games. I think Georgia, I think they're going to score a lot of points in this game. I know that there's been some predictions for some low-scoring games, so give me the over in the Georgia-Ohio State game. Also, LSU, a 14.5-point favorite over Purdue. I think a lot of Brian Kelly. I'm going to take the Tigers. I think they really got something going offensively. 7 plays over 25 yards against Georgia. Georgia, actually trending down on the big plays second half of the season. Give me LSU to cover a 14.5-point spread against Purdue, and give me the over in the Georgia-Ohio State Peach Bowl this weekend.
For what it was worth, I thought the total in the Georgia-Ohio State game was actually really high. I don't have an opinion on the over-under necessarily. I mean, I guess my side would be the under here, but for those of you curious, the number is 62. 62, I think a very high total in a game involving Georgia, but Mike on the side of the over right there. Jeff Sintel, how about for you? Anything on the board that you want that we haven't already picked here today?
Yeah, this is going to feel like I was sitting in the on-deck circle and looking at what the leadoff hitter was saying here. But the number that really screamed to me, besides looking for some juicy player props in Ohio State and Georgia, was that 62, that over-under number for that. I really like the over in this game. I think the way Ohio State can stay in this game is to throw the ball deep and try to get some chunk plays. Like, that's what the film says is the way you want to move the ball down the field against Georgia. I think they have the personnel to do that. I think this is a game where Georgia's offense shines every bit as much as maybe its defense has the reputation for. I think they're going to be more than the 62 points scored in this game. Give me the over here for that one.
Wow, very surprising. 2 picks of the over. Big total for the Dogs, yet both Mike and Jeff like it a lot. Connor, how about you? Across the board, anything you want? What do you have for us?
Yeah, I thought we were doing a flashback show here, picking Georgia over-unders. I mean, I want no part of that. I got 4 picks for you here. This game will be before this game airs. Give me Washington plus 3.5 against Texas. This Texas team is a spreadsheet team, and you know how I feel about spreadsheet teams. Throw them in the garbage. I think this Washington team is really talented. Michael Penix playing for Washington there. I think he's going to throw all over that Texas defense. I like Georgia minus the 7. I know BA has laid out a case for that. I know Dari feels the same way as well. I just feel really confident about what this Georgia team is going to do. And with what we've seen from them throughout this season, when they have a chance to go out and make a statement, they've done so. And then, Dari, I know this is going to be warm to your heart. I got 2 unders to give out to close things out this year. SEC Big Ten games, and buddy, you know I'm taking the under. First, Mississippi State, Illinois, obviously the passing of Mike Leach there, that's a tough circumstance for Mississippi State. They want to go out there and honor the legendary Pirate Mike Leach in that game. Over under in this game is 46. I like the under in this game. I think these are both really good defenses, and they're going to try and limit the scoring in this game, even though Illinois, without its defensive coordinator and Ryan Walters, who is the new head coach of Purdue. And then finally, I believe this is the lowest under we've seen this year. Kentucky, Iowa, over under 31 points. Now, I'm worried about a defensive touchdown here. That could make things a little bit dicey. But both these teams are going to be playing third-string quarterbacks. Give me the under in Iowa, Kentucky. It's a nasty game, and I'm going to take those 31 points and just hope no defensive touchdowns, no special team touchdowns, just ride out with a nice 12-10 victory.
So 2 things here. First of all, I absolutely love the under in the Illinois-Mississippi State game, and obviously there's an emotional connection to that. We're all praying for our folks there in Starkville. But in terms of the game on the field, defensive-minded head coach and Zach Arnett, obviously Brett Bielema is comfortable in those kinds of games there as well. That's a beautiful play. And, folks, Connor's giving you a very interesting window into how over-unders work there too. Obviously we got opt-outs on both sides at quarterback for Iowa, Kentucky, but there is a certain point in which the sliding scale of diminished quarterback play actually brings the over back into play, because all of a sudden you have to worry about pick sixes. That is a very, very salient point that Connor's making, but also a fun game to watch. Second straight year for Iowa and Kentucky, but as low a point total as you're going to see here at the conclusion of 2022 calendar, getting ready to turn to 2023. I got 2 for you here right now, and just given the fact we have a very small board, it's kind of tricky to sort of find anything worth, kind of investing in, but I believe I got 2 for you here. I told you earlier, I really like Clemson against Tennessee here in this spot. And I like them enough to tell you this, that you can find right now alternate line Clemson minus 13.5 at plus 280. I wouldn't go above 14 on that right now, but a good price plus 280 to get Clemson minus 13.5. I believe if I'm going to take Clemson at all, I'm probably going to play around with the nice price on the big win, because I do think that Tennessee's depleted. I don't think they have a lot of motivation to win this game. I think Clemson probably does for more reasons than one. I actually like Clemson minus 13.5 on a plus 280 line to get that spread there in that particular spot. And something else I like, I mentioned before, when it comes to college football playoff, the overwhelming outcome has been favorites winning big. I told you before, I don't quite know that I think that Georgia wins this game by the traditional 3 touchdowns, the way we've seen a lot of favorites win in the past, but I do believe they win. And if there is a blowout, I believe it's likely to come on the Michigan TCU side. So with that in mind here, I like a 6-point teaser on both Michigan and Georgia. Take them down below the key number of 7, below the key number of 3. Put it in a situation where essentially all you have to do is have both favorites win the game, and you cash on that. I do like a 2-team teaser with both Georgia and Michigan going down to around a point and a half on both sides there on that. And I feel pretty good about both those teams winning that game in that situation. So those are my 2 best bets. And Dari, the floor is yours to finish off today's show.
Yeah, I love those under picks, Connor. Those are great. The Pac-12 has kind of rubbed off me because, like Connor, my strongest play of the week is Washington at Texas. I absolutely love the Huskies in this game. They're going to win it outright. Take the money line, pound it. I may even push the money line up to 6. I think they're going to win by more than 6. Another game I do like is actually about to kick off here very shortly is the UCF game. Viewers won't be able to get some action on that, but I do like that game today. It's +3 or +4 depending on where you
Golden Knights +3 right there.
Yeah,
Golden Knights +3 right there, right? Yeah, I like that number too. I think you're absolutely right, Dari. I believe John Rice Plumlee is also playing in that game as well.
Yeah, and what do we get for a 3-game teaser? Because I think a 3-game teaser is probably better if you work in those unders in the Iowa and the Mississippi State game and the Michigan game. Because I think a Michigan is kind of a home run. So you can kind of play with that to get some more points to tease with. But I definitely would like those unders if you tease that more. I think that's probably a safer play on this.
So to give you a little bit of insight on me, and who's to say I know what I'm talking about, but the only teasers I ever like, I would prefer you at 8 points, but I'll take you at like 7, 7.5, 8, bringing you below 2 key numbers where all you have to do is win the game. For me personally, those are the only teasers that make sense. Any other number, I feel like I'm not quite so sure you're getting the best value on that. But for me personally, the teasers I do like is when I can take you below 2 key numbers to get you down to a situation where essentially I'm talking about just winning the game for a team that's obviously, favored enough to have some respect behind them. Those are really the only teasers, Dari, that I would typically certainly endorse in a situation like this.
Sure. I mean, you go a 3-game teaser, you're getting 10 points, that you can play with.
Yeah.
So you just get some more points there, especially for
Fair
games
enough.
that aren't supposed to have a lot of points.
Certainly fair enough. Dari, that's great stuff. And obviously it's been fun all year long here on Go with the Flow presented by RS Andrews. We're now whittling down. We're getting down to just a few number of games. But what do you say this, Dari? Let's bring you back here on Dog Nation Daily as a part of Go with the Flow. I should say as part of our RS Andrews cool down at some point in time, maybe prior to the national championship. We'll look back on the season and we'll give out some bets for that national championship game, which we hope involves the Georgia Bulldogs here after getting it done against Ohio State. How does that sound?
Absolutely. Maybe we can broadcast from SoFi.
I like that too. So good stuff from Dari Peiro, our entire Dog Nation team. And a big thanks to all of you for tuning in, and a big thanks for the fun that we get to have on a show like this. RS Andrews making it all possible. The one you turn to for air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. We know after the last few days how cold it can get, which means that if you're worried about your heating system not keeping you warm for the rest of the winter, time now to get it tuned back up to factory fresh specs. You can find out more online about that at rsandrews.com. We also appreciate our friends at MyBookie providing all the point spread data that we use on the show like this. Enjoy the games here this weekend. Obviously, keep a good thought about these dogs, and we'll look forward to talking to you again, back here again very soon.
See you guys.
Thank you, Dari. Appreciate it.
Take it easy, Dari. See you.
See you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll chat with you in a minute.